Morning, everybody. I know it is a busy day here in the Capitol, so we're going to get started relatively on time here. I do want to start, though, with a brief moment of silence for the 10 victims who were lost in the Senseless tragedy in Buffalo, victims of white supremacy, and we certainly keep their families in our close thoughts and the entire city of Buffalo in our thoughts and hearts. Thank you. I want to have my partner on this effort and many efforts, and good friend, Assemblywoman Amy Paulin, really kick things off, tee things up, and we've got a few folks who are going to speak alongside her. But first, Amy Paulin.
Thank you, James. Thank you, Senator. So the bill that we're talking about today is very timely. And the reason I say that is because, as a young child, my mom used to take me to the library. She was an avid reader. And so libraries have updated their way of thinking about things, but we haven't. At that library, there was a guy who would flash all the young women, young girls, and including me. And I remember being afraid of that guy, and I would see him often. He wandered around the library. My mom would go look at books, and she would let me go look at books. But I always knew who he was, and I always knew that I could go to my mom and tell her that it was happening, and he would get chased away. The digital world has changed everything. So now, that same flasher, which, by the way, if you look at Section 245 in the penal law, can't do that. It's a crime. But libraries have understood that we have to go digital, but New York state law is still not in that place. That same flasher now uses technology to flash his victims. And they are in the subways. We are hearing from young women. Kudos to Bumble for bringing this to all of our attention, and to New York State Now for reinforcing that message. We know that everything now is digital, and yet New York state law is not caught up with that. We have not made it a crime to flash someone digitally. And imagine being in the subway or a public bus, and you get this image. You don't know who it is. This could be 10 o'clock at night, and you're going to walk home alone. And you don't know who's following you, and you don't know who that is. You can't go to your mother or your partner or your friend and say, help me, it's that guy. You can't go to the police necessarily and say it's that guy. It is a very scary time, and we have to update New York state laws to conform with the technology that is being used and victimizing women. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblywoman Paulin. And she's absolutely right. The top line here is that our state law just simply has not kept up with the technology, with the digital advancement in society. And just imagine you are, and it's usually young women, but not exclusively women, but imagine you're a young woman and you're in a public bus, or you plant yourself on a subway car to get to work, or even you're in your own personal car and you're at a red light. Any of those instances, you're in any kind of crowd, someone doesn't even need your cell phone number to send an unsolicited, disgusting image of themselves. They airdrop it. They can just airdrop it to you. And right now, state law does not protect against it. And the thing that I want to highlight, though, is you don't have to imagine that happening. especially if you're a young woman. This isn't a rare occurrence. This isn't an occasional occurrence. An estimated 78% of young women have been victimized by exactly this. The large majority of young women today have received one of these unsolicited, disgusting digital images and have been cyberflashed. And so, look, as a relatively new father of a daughter who just turned 1 year old, I want her to grow up here in New York State with the protection of state law against this kind of disgusting behavior. And it's more than just disgusting, it's more than just unsolicited. For a lot of young women, it's triggering, it's terrorizing, and we have to do something about it, and we're trying to do that with this legislation here today. I next want to bring up Bumble, who's really been at the vanguard of this effort, and the person who will be speaking on behalf of Bumble is the head of public policy for the Americas, Peyton Ahim.
Thank you.
Peyton.
Good morning, I'm Peyton Ahimi. I'm head of Americas for public policy for Bumble. I'm here today to offer the opportunity to New York to make this illegal in the state. Across the United States, flashing in person is illegal in every single state. But digital flashing, sending these lewd images online, is only illegal in 2 states. The first one is Texas, where we're headquartered, and where in 2019, we fought and passed a bill there. And most recently, in a matter of a few weeks ago, we worked with the National Women's Political Caucus and others and the lovely policymakers of Virginia to pass unanimously and bipartisan a bill in Virginia to also make it illegal. We know from our own users, we've polled them, women on the dating app, but women on our Friends app and women on our Entrepreneur and Business app. At least 1 in 3 of them are receiving these lewd images, and 96% of them didn't want it. We've also done national polls, and we know that more than half of the population has received images like this. We're going state by state, working with amazing policymakers to make this happen. New York led the way for flashing when it was becoming illegal before. They should be leading the way as well for illegal flashing. Again, we're really honored to be here today with NOW and the National Women's Political Caucus, our patrons and sponsors for this bill, to help make the internet a kinder, gentler place for everyone. That's women, men, and the children that are coming after us. On our own app, we worked with artificial intelligence to ban it, but it's not protecting anyone else. On the subway, you have real estate agents as well who are just trying to do business, who are not able to do that. Their faces and their pictures are out there. The internet is the economic driver of our time. You don't want a percentage of the population using it to have to deal with these type of issues. Again, please work with us. Please raise up and let's have this bill voted on and brought to public vote. At this time, I want to return my time to the President of National Women's Political Caucus, Donna Lent.
Good morning. Yes, I'm Donna Lent, President of the National Women's Political Caucus, which is the oldest grassroots, multi-partisan organization solely dedicated to electing women and having them, more women appointed in office. And we're celebrating our 50th year this year. So, you know, you may be thinking that this really does impact young women who are using dating apps, but I can tell you, I myself, I've had the same phone number out in the public domain for the last 35, 38 years, and my number is everywhere. My number is everywhere. And it doesn't prevent me from getting such an image, or other women my age, as Peyton said, real estate brokers. You know, this really is a good part about education, because we need to educate the public that you wouldn't do this in person. If you wouldn't send this photo to your mother or your grandmother, you shouldn't be sending it to anyone, and that there is a consequence to be paid for it. And that's what this bill will do. It offers a consequence, and at the same time educating the public so that they know that this is inexcusable. So I appreciate everybody coming today and the support, and I can't thank Assemblywoman Paulin and Senator Skoufis for really leading the charge on this bill. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Next, I want to turn it over to one of my Senate colleagues who's joined us, which really demonstrates the bipartisan nature of this bill, and that's Senator Phil Boyle. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Senator Skoufis and Assemblymember Paulin, advocates now, Bumble, and my longtime friend Donna Lent. This is an extremely serious issue, and we need to address it now. A couple years ago, I was talking to a large assembly of 7th graders in my district, and we were talking about the bill I had at the time on revenge porn. And I asked them, I said, look, no cameras around here. A show of hands, there were probably about 200 students. How many of you had sent images over your cell phones that you probably wouldn't want your parents to see? Well, more than half of them raised their hand. This was 7th grade. That's why we need to send a very strong message by passing this cyberflashing legislation to make a message not just to those adults who do it, but kids coming up to know that it is not acceptable. It is, in fact, going to be a crime. We have 2 weeks left in the session approximately, and as Senator Skoufis says, we have bipartisan support. I'm glad to be a sponsor, and I can tell you that when this bill is brought to the Senate floor, I believe that every single one of the members will pass it, and I'm sure that it's going to be unanimous or almost unanimous in the Assembly. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to be here.
Thank you, Phil. Now I want to turn it over to the National Organization for Women Now, New York President Sonia Sorio. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Bumble, for your incredible leadership on this issue across the country, and to our amazing sponsors who have been there to support and work on gender-based violence. That includes you as well, Mr. Boyle. So at Now in New York City, we're hearing from our members and from women everywhere of disturbing reports of cyberflashing. And it includes our own employees. It includes our interns. It's one of the most difficult things that I have had to experience as an employer in the last 3 or 4 years that I've seen this really become an issue. These are young women who are working so hard to get their education, to get work experience. We're so lucky that they choose us. They come to New York to choose to do human rights work. And on those first days when we have our welcome lunch, I've now had to add onto my discussion about how we're committed to making it a meaningful and amazing experience for them, helping them start their careers, I've got to include, and by the way, digital sexual harassment is a thing here. Those who came before you have experienced it, it's going to happen to you. Cyberflashing is a modern form of harassment. It happens in public, at work, on campus, on social media, by strangers and acquaintances alike. And those on the receiving end shouldn't have to deal with it. It's unnerving, it's alarming, it's disgusting. And that's what it's intended to be by the person who sent them. You know, New York has a really good record on strengthening laws on sexual harassment. From stalking to revenge porn to sexual harassment in the workplace. We have sent a strong message and worked very hard to pass measures that give people in the workplace a platform to report abuse. And we have held employers responsible for addressing it. Let's not stop now. It's time for New York and the New York legislature to send a strong message to the public that cyberflashing will not be tolerated. You can't harass anyone at work, you can't harass someone on the street, and you shouldn't be able to harass someone online. You know, as a parent and an employer, I'm asking for you to help me do my job. I want to be able to teach my daughter that she has a right to live free from this form of harassment. She's a New York City kid who now is heading on public transit to get to school. And I want her to know that she has recourse and that she can report that. And when she comes home to tell me, we have a way to report this. And as an employer, give me something new to say to the amazing young women who I work with, who deserve to start their careers with the zest for life and learning that they bring to my office every day. So I want to thank you all for being here. This is a very important issue. We can get it done. We've done it before. We can get this done. We need the Assembly Codes Committee and the Senate as well to get this through and let the members vote on it. Thank you.
Thank you, and well said. Last but certainly not least, I want to invite Christy Foster to the podium. Christy's my chief of staff, but more relevant to this press conference, she's able to speak with personal firsthand experience. And if you wouldn't mind, Christy, coming up. Thanks for being here.
Hi, everyone. The first time, and I say the first time because it unfortunately has happened more than once, that I had an unwanted photo sent to me. It was a few years ago. I was on the subway. It was late at night. I was traveling alone, and I had a photo airdropped to me and was pretty shocked to see how incredibly lewd it was. I was so shaken up that I jumped off the subway, even though I had many, many stops to my final destination, and waited the 10, 15 minutes or so to get on the next subway car. I was just trying to get home from work. It was my time, my device, and frankly, a full invasion of my privacy. I did not ask for an explicit photo. I don't know the person who sent it. But what I did know is that I felt deeply unsafe in my own body at that moment, and like someone was watching to see my reaction. And I felt like they were in close proximity to me. No one should have to feel that way, right? Like just trying to get through your day. And then I was even more surprised to find a couple weeks later, I raised this issue with a couple girlfriends at lunch, and every single one of them had a similar story. A bus, a train, subway, car, just being sent something in a moment of their day and being completely sidelined by receiving something just so incredibly graphic. And so all that to say that social media and our phones, they're relatively new technology to us, and they've allowed the digital lines of consent to get extremely blurry. And with anything new, it's really important that our legislative leaders keep our laws in line with those changes. So I just want to thank Assemblywoman Paulin, Senator Skoufis, all the organizations here, all the partners here that are working to bridge that gap and putting their time and energy and effort into ensuring that this legislation becomes law and that people's privacy is no longer invaded. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Christy. Thanks for sharing that. And that's why we're doing this. Any questions from the press? You, then, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
In relation to what happened this weekend in Buffalo, I know that there's social media posts that were circulating prior. Could this legislation help play a role in that as far as finding questionable posts online and bring those attention?
Not really.
Yeah, I think they're separate issues. Yeah.
Yeah.
So practically speaking, if this legislation gets passed, how would you really be able to criminalize someone that does this, who sends a lewd image?
Yeah.
So in the instances of the photos being airdropped, would you even be able to charge someone in
Yeah.
that case?
Well, look, sometimes you do know where it comes from. There might be one other person on the subway car, right? But sometimes you don't. But law enforcement does have technology where they can trace things that you or I wouldn't have any idea where things come from. I don't know if Amy, you want to
Well,
add
I would
anything
also
to that?
say that if we always know it's on the 4 train at 10 a.m., then because someone has reported it, because they know it's illegal now, specifically illegal, then the MTA would have an ability to tell the New York City police, or the police would have those reports, and there could be a monitoring. If it's on Metro North every day at 8 o'clock. And usually these guys are repeat offenders who are on those same means of transportation at those same times during the day. So there would be an intimidation by just having law enforcement on those entities during that time, and you would probably stop the behavior. Similarly to the way that the library director shooed that guy out of the library when any of my friends or I were there reporting that he was there disturbing us.
And then in terms of Bumble, so Bumble already receives notifications when someone sends something inappropriate, correct? So how do those cases play out usually?
So on Bumble, again, we control the app. We have something called Private Detector. It's an artificial intelligence tool that blurs the image, and then the user decides if they want to see it or not. Again, we're not passing judgment, but they're the ones who allow it to be seen or not. If you violate that, you can get banned from the app, and if you violate that more than once, you may never be allowed to return to the app. So on our platform, there's strict rules. What we're doing here is talking about this is not about dating apps, this is about the internet at large and trying to bring this across the board past just the Bumble app.
Everyone good? Okay, terrific. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.